any other guests that we might have. I'll kick off with the Karakia and then we'll sing Erere before getting into the meeting. Me ono tātou e te atua, tēnā au, tēnei mātou, o mema kua poti te hapori o Whanganui, arahina I a mātou, ki te wakatau nā wakataunga pai, mō te rohi, mō te nā katoa, tangata katoa, kia piki ai te ora o te hapori, mena iwi katoa o Whanganui, haumie hui tā iki e. And let's stand for Erere.
Erere, te awa tupua, mai te kahui monga ki tana roa, ka wakapiri a mai ko ngā piringa, hena ko tama upoko, tupoho po te ki e, ko o te awa ko o te awa ko Erere, te awa tupua.
Fantastic. I reckon that was an upgrade to a B+. We're getting there. Just in time to learn a new Waiata at Kate's meeting. Awesome. Okay, so apologies. I've got an apology from Andrew, Mayor Andrew, and Councillor Michael. There's no further apologies, so can I get a mover for those, please? Pete, and a second, Glenda. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Any declarations of interest? No declarations. Okay, we'll move on to the resolution to accept the late agenda items. So this is in relation to the Whanganui Port Limited Partnership update reports. This item wasn't on the agenda because it was not finalised at the time that the agenda was published. And the reports cannot wait until a subsequent meeting because the matter is time sensitive.
Level in an economic development context. I'm really keen that we also ensure that our partners are embedded in Whanganui partners. It's in the name. And we're also focused on the short and long-term effects of our work. We've been noted recently for our work in the visitor space, and I want to make sure that we're matching that success with what we're doing in the business context in terms of business growth and also the attraction of new business to Whanganui. Those are the key points of my emphasis leading the organisation. Very quickly on the economy, and I won't go into detail in terms of what's in the report, but just to lift out that during the winter, and we know in certain areas of our businesses, it's been a testing winter period, but Whanganui was the #1 region for domestic tourism growth for 3 months in a row out of 31 regions. And essentially we normally think about the visitor spend as the cream on top, as it were, but during the winter period it was absolutely essential money coming into the economy that our work and others was helping to stimulate. So I think that was a crucial period that we've got through, and I think as consumer spend we saw has softened generally in July and August, the work that we've done has helped contribute towards that, so that's great to see. Strategically, we've been doing work in the background to prepare for a 3-year statement of intent, and I look forward to conversations that mainly I've been having with David, Chief Executive of the Council, but also yourselves in the next few months. To lift out some key points from our recent activity, this is the first time that we've published the impact indicators, which was a new feature of our statement of intent for 23-24. We've got some initial successes, but I would note that there's a change in terms of our reporting in that it's not us filling in these numbers, it is an opt-in thing by businesses. So what we're working on at the moment is capturing more of these successes, more of these reports, but at least you can see that we're starting to gain traction, we're starting to adopt these results which were all about an incremental impact to Whanganui businesses, and that our work and our projects and our activity is flowing on to that. Education has been a big theme of the last quarter and included a trip over to Asia, Japan, Vietnam and Korea. And the spirit and the aim of that, again, short and long term, every international secondary student is worth $40,000 to the Whanganui economy. And what we're trying to rebuild is an overseas student number in the secondary school space, which was in triple figures pre-COVID and is now in single figures. So we can see there's a multi-million-dollar benefit by bringing those people back to Whanganui, and also from the more social side, a cultural element that also builds up our people as leaders and as global citizens themselves. We've seen recently inward delegations as well, a couple from Tokyo Board of Education most recently last week with a delegation of 28 people. So you can see there's some substance to this, there's some regularity. It's not a one-off hit. There's a number of concerted efforts to gain traction in the market and build these relationships with overseas institutions. The UNESCO City Design Ambassador Group has also been established, and I know this group is aware of the work that we've been doing to make more explicit that Whanganui is a UNESCO City Design, and one of the key bits of work there was the tohu, or logo, and we have now, working with representatives from Tupō and Tamaupako, set a group of principles around the work with that, which now enables us to get into the implementation phase of the work and actually get this out to market, which is a great step and great progress. And we appreciate their input into that and their guidance that they've given us. I think there's some really good initiatives going on in our creative space, and we have a regional film office, which is a differentiator for Whanganui partners, and branded Film Whanganui. We are pursuing some production opportunities, and there's a couple of notable ones there if they come to fruition that we're working on at the moment. The report also refers to some great work we've done in the marketing space, building a database that's going to enable tourism-focused businesses to increase their revenue, and we've also done some recent work analysing events and their effect over the last year and made decisions in terms of event funding. So I'll close at that and obviously invite questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, both of you, for that thorough report. I'll kick off with a question just around the, I'm on page 21 of the agenda under the strategic update. You've mentioned then about an in-depth session with Council on their statement of intent. In terms of your timeline around that, what sort of, in terms of us working together on that,
Yep.
what sort of timeline are you thinking?
Yep. So
the letter of the year, or
so the letter of expectation required by yourselves is required by the 1st of December, and then we are required to respond to it by the 1st of March in terms of a draft statement of intent. David and I are at the moment working on that on a sort of one-to-one basis, and so I guess we can build the foundation of some of the themes and some of the opportunities. And I envisage, I would certainly welcome more of an in-depth discussion with elected members shortly after that, depending on what's feasible. I think, obviously, in these kind of updates, we give you a quick snapshot, but there's probably some depth in terms of the opportunities, the things we're working on. Some of the things that come to fruition take 2 to 4, 5 years, and we've got a number of those in the pipeline at the moment. So whether it's our people attraction work, business growth, I'd invite that within the next few weeks. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks for the update. Okay, I'll go to Helen with the first question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I've got quite a few questions. I hope that's okay. So I'll go back to wasn't expecting to go next. Look, thanks very much for your report. I know that Collegiate already have about 45 foreign students, and you never mentioned them. So could you just tell us, do you talk to Collegiate about how they've managed to keep their students, etc.?
Yeah, we've. I mean, I guess this was the first delegation, and there was a conversation from. Well, Rach Hoskin was leading this piece of work. All schools have been involved in the conversation, and I think for them, they felt they were. Well, I'm speaking a little bit for them, but that they were. Yeah, perhaps a little bit more successful than the schools that we have directly worked on in this delegation. But I see in future the economies of scale of all working together and targeting new markets can certainly be of benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've been fairly stable and they're full at 45, so they've obviously know how to keep their foreign students.
Yeah, that's something we can certainly pick up, Helen. I think the 3 schools that we worked with directly, they've gone from over 100.5 equivalent full-time students in 2019 to 7 now. Yeah. So, yeah, that's worth, I think, $3.6 million to the economy.
Yeah, that's very important for them. So, obviously, it's disappointing that the logo for City of Design, UNESCO City of Design, has taken this long. And I'm hearing that the relationship with iwi has been reset, and you've now moving towards that. And in terms of what the next steps we might see, as in promoting and making the most of that relationship, the UNESCO City of Design.
Yeah. So we're in the a piece of work at the moment developing the brand guidelines. Like I say, we're getting to the implementation phase. To take a step back, so we've worked really closely with Cecilia Kumaroa and also now Rauri Tinaro on this piece, and I think it was really important to us and them to have these principles around. We want it to be inclusive. We want all businesses to be also be able to use this tohu. It's not just a sort of destination piece that we're going to use. It's for all of Whanganui, but it's really important that we have some clear context as to how and where and when that is used. So I know it's taken a little bit of time, but I think we've got to a really good place, and now implementation is much nearer.
So is that the main thrust for this year? Of what we're going to see in terms of what you might be asking us for in terms of, what's the next step with this, making the most of the City of Design, UNESCO City of Design? Do we have to put money into a budget to do something more, or what? No,
I wouldn't be asking for it. All our work is obviously within the statement of intent for this year, and it's all our work streams are fully budgeted, costed out. One of the key points in our statement of intent is, well, one is to roll this out, and another is to have 100 businesses adopt the badge. Because I think a key point was that, like I say, we don't necessarily see this as just a destination piece, that we want our export businesses to utilise and to bear this logo to help tell the story in our export markets as to the quality of our produce and our goods and our service.
Okay, so we're not looking at having like a festival of design here or something like that. That's not on your radar in the
Not
media.
event focused, although we are working through what does implementation actually mean to get the engagement of businesses and to get that adoption. But I don't envisage a large event like you're describing.
Okay.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, potentially.
Have
potentially
you got a strategy for rolling out the City of Design? To take advantage. I think we did have something, or not? Have we got something that we're working towards?
Got a plan.
We're working on the marketing plan to launch the tohu at the moment. As part of the implementation.
I think it's just something we should understand a little bit more about. Dunedin has a literary festival, UNESCO literary badge, and they would hold a literary festival wrapped around that, I guess, as a tourist attraction, So that's what I'm trying to understand, is where are we going with that? Because I think we see it as the big one, a really big one.
Yeah. One thing I'd invite, and I'm conscious of sort of setting up too many meetings for yourselves with the busy time, but there's a lot of information we can unpack and provide to you at a dedicated session if you would like to do that. Emma is over in Wuhan, one of the creative cities right now, at their invitation and at their cost, and that's a great example of the work going on at the moment in that space. So happy to get into more detail on that with you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you. And I presume you fund the back house amount of money?
We have, in terms of the establishment of it, for the last 3, well, from the whole, Gail may want to talk to this, but from the idea being conceived to the trust being set up, and we have supported it financially to a certain degree this year. But Gail, you may want to add something?
Yeah.
as a trustee?
As far as the Backhouse Trust is concerned, at the moment, in fact, the trustees had a meeting just last night. The changes being made in UCOL Te Pūkenga have impacted heavily on some decisions that we'd like to make as trustees. One of the, I'm not sure what her title is, regional directors of Te Pūkenga, Olivia Hall, is now on the trust of the Backhouse, and that is who we met last night to talk about where to from here. They are, needless to say, in a difficult situation at the moment because they don't really know where they're going next. And so what we agreed last night is that we're going to press a pause button for a while until we can sort out exactly what Te Pūkenga want to do, how they're going to do it, if they even exist to do it. So it's impacting on decisions about the Backhouse. In the meantime, we've agreed to disestablish the position of the Chief Executive. That was agreed yesterday. So he will be departing. And we have put in place a temporary mechanism until February to keep the Backhouse operating. And then in that time, we will then meet, and hopefully Te Pūkenga will have a better idea about what it's trying to achieve, particularly with its buildings, with its new programs, with its focus, particularly on rangatahi, where we go from here. So we are in a state of, I guess, limbo a little bit, but only, you know, when you're relying on organisations the size of Te Pūkenga, you do have to take time to work it through. We did come up with, as I said, a plan last night. We all signed off on it. So that's what we'll do. This is giving us time now through to probably February to actually then look at and how do we go forward next.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. Very valuable. On page 5 of your report, the event analysis report you talk about, now we fund you specifically for passing money over for event funding. I'd quite like a copy of that analysis report, please.
Happy to send it to all of you.
Thank you. And in your partnerships and stakeholders, you don't, on page 6, you don't mention business Whanganui at all. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, well, I guess we're just we're trying to lift out the highlights of the last period. And as part of what I just said in my opening, very committed to our partnership with Business Whanganui Chamber of Commerce. Absolutely. So, yeah, it wasn't a...
Oh, yeah. You don't have a formal
deliberate
arrangement with them for any services or anything? You're not collaborating on anything?
No formal arrangement, no.
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 Right. Interesting. Okay. And the only thing I find in your report where you have your KPIs, etc., and you'll put, you know, we've established help establish one new business, you're not giving any detail on who those businesses are, and I find that really difficult because it's just a dry report.
Yep.
So I would certainly appreciate more detail in there where you're actually, if possible, naming those results, you know, so that we've got a bit more flavour. Thank you.
Know that for next time. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's all, Helen?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Jenny.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. My questions are a bit more focused around the visitor sector. So we've heard, and they're really great percentage numbers about how well Whanganui is doing, but do we have the actual numbers, the raw numbers?
Yeah.
And do we have those in comparison to, say, our neighbours like Taranaki and Ruapehu?
Yeah, absolutely. We can circulate all of those. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. If you could send those out when you send out the other stuff, that'd be really great.
Yep.
And when it comes to the tourist spend, what is considered tourist spend, is it possible to actually identify what is actual tourist spending? That didn't make sense, did it? I mean, I don't know where you get the numbers from. Is it credit card spend?
Yeah, it's based on credit card spend through a company called Paymark, and it is all distributed through the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment's website, but we'll lift those out. Another just quick point is that working with Regional Tourism New Zealand, with which we're a member, we're working on a piece of work that's trying to articulate the actual lifetime value of a visitor. We know it's like the front door to the house, if you speak, and we know it's really important for a place like Whanganui to have those events, to have those interruptions and reasons to come here, and then we know they become students and residents, etc., and we're working on a national piece with others to better quantify that conversion and that value.
I understand. So is it possible to separate out tourism from visitor, or are they all lumped in as one?
No,
I would imagine that would be the case.
It's effectively any spend from outside of the district is referred to as visitor.
So it can't be necessarily attributed to tourism. Okay, and my last question, I didn't see any mention in your report. I know that there can't be any mention in the quantitative stuff, but Te Ike Nahu, the river strategy, you didn't mention that at all. What is your intentions around that? And
good point.
Because it's quite a glaring omission.
Yeah, a number of us were at the Putiki Marae, obviously a couple of months ago. We are working on, I guess, like many others, immersing ourselves into that strategy and understanding what may mean for us. I believe, well, we are looking to set up discussions with Gerard, Albert, and others for, like I say, us to immerse ourselves in what it means and what it may mean for us in areas of focus such as tourism, around the preservation and even restoration of the Awa and how that connects to the work that we're doing. So yeah, absolutely, I'll take that point that should have made reference to it. Obviously, it wasn't our piece of work, although I would note also that Colleen Sheldon, our primary industries lead, is also on Te Kōpuka as the primary industries representative.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. I'll go to Glenda next.
Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan and Gail, for the report. I'm on page 5 as well. Just a couple of questions about the initiatives there. The Amplify funding, and I might be reading this wrong, we believe Amplify was highly successful in the marketing sense, strong awareness figures. So are you saying that the funding that was given out to the small number of people was targeted for marketing? Is that what you're saying?
No, sorry. So we recently did a business survey of all programs that businesses can access, whether they're through us or others in the community or even nationally. And out of all the different programs and things people can access, Amplify came top. This is head of, like, for example,
Right.
Digital Boost, which is a central government thing,
Yep.
way above it. So that's what I mean in terms of it got good awareness. Yeah, I was keen that we just take a moment to pause on that and to look at the effects of it. We've had it out for round about 12 months. The intention was to, as a program, was not just to get behind some high growth, high potential businesses, but to also develop this ecosystem of like-minded businesses trying to grow and to develop a network. But taken a pause and a step back to review what was the actual impact and effect, with a view to potentially we can turn this back on from next year if we're clearly seeing, like I say, a multiplier effect on our economy, which was the intention, as opposed to just those businesses on their own grow, although there's a benefit to that as well, obviously.
Yeah, I'd be really keen to see that report. I think we will probably would be, just to see what the value has been for each of those businesses. Thanks.
Can I just pause for a moment?
Sure.
I don't think the live stream's working.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting some messages through that the live stream's not working. Sorry to interrupt.
Let's just continue because we're quite far through the report. And Bridget, if you can just sing out if there's any ongoing issues, and we can resolve it. Maybe take an adjournment if it can't be resolved quickly. But we'll keep going, given how far through we are this report.
Okay. Thanks. So my next question is, you've made a comment in the same paragraph, support provided to WDC in hotel attraction activity. We believe we could take more of an active role in this piece of work to assist WDC.
Yeah, I think this is.
Unpack that a bit.
Sorry.
Yeah, unpack that sentence a bit.
This is a piece of work that council is, I guess, leading and scoping in terms of perhaps, I'm talking a little bit for David here, but its own infrastructure and its own property. What could go alongside in parallel is that while it'd be great to have one hotel here, wouldn't it be great to have 2 or 3 or a mixture? What we're hearing a lot is what customers are wanting is a mixture of accommodation provision, and so there could be a piece alongside that's trying to gather more expressions of interest who else is out there in the market, but primarily that we, we have a business lead within our team, and that connects them into the work. So yeah, it's not been a major focus of ours, even, and council is leading it, but we do get asked a lot of questions by the public, etc., on how's it going. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenda. Rob.
Thank you, Josh. Three questions. First of all, the foreign student program, the attraction of students, let's hope it's really successful. What I'm concerned about, though, Jonathan, is I'm pretty aware that there's a real difficulty with hosting these students. How satisfied are you that if you get these numbers up, there'll be host families? Because at the moment, well, I know that they've had a lot of difficulty with placements.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have been working on the basis of we had 100 for these schools, therefore there's been a drop and a loss, and therefore we should be able to feasibly return to those figures. But that isn't something I've heard personally, so I'd be interested in following that up.
I think you should. If you talk to Natasha and about that, and we were contacted by the school to host for the last visit, and they were desperate, to find families. So desperate to come to us, I should say. Now, the next question is about the marketing. Is there a marketing campaign plan for the summer?
Yes. Yeah, we so I guess there's 2 points. We're always marketing Whanganui 24/7. It's an always on activity, but obviously we have these spikes in terms of our advertising campaigns. We had one, as is mentioned in the papers, in winter, which we haven't traditionally done sort of 3, 4, 5 years ago. We've introduced that recently, trying to help businesses through the period. But absolutely, there will be a summer campaign out in market, and that's obviously designed to top up that the spend that local businesses are seeing. So we do that as standard every year.
Okay. Well, quite often as elected members, we get to see this when it appears. And it'd be really good if we could get an overview of what the campaign is and maybe the collateral being used and give us an idea so we can actually look for it.
Good idea. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, and the other question is it follows on from what Deputy Mayor said about events. You're sending out a schedule. I see that you have funded 11 organisations. Now, I have had a couple of organisations come to me talking about the reduced funding. And of course, we have no real answer for that, but I know that Whanganui and Partners funding has been reduced as a bulk fund. So can you tell me what the situation is as far as reduced funding for events? What's the policy, and is there some quite drastic drops in funding?
There's probably a couple of things here. So we have mentioned this at this report in the past, but Whanganui and Partners received additional funding from MB for events in the last 2 or 3 years. So for 4 of our major events, there was quite a significant top-up that we could have used that money anyway. We want $200,000. We could have used that any way we liked. That was our remit, and we determined, and I remember having a session, it was probably about 2 years ago with council as well, that we wanted to use it to support established larger events, and that was Masters Games, Cemetery Circuit, Vintage Weekend, and Artists Open Studios. The COVID funding has now elapsed. That was related to the $50 billion COVID fund that the government had. So that has now elapsed. So I think it's fair to say there's a sense of budgets have dropped, when in reality that was always a bonus, as it were. And in terms of the core council funding, we have, there's been, because of the financial scenario, there's been some very tough decisions and discussions here, but we have held our funding for the vast majority of established events. There may be 1 or 2 caveats where it may have dropped marginally. Probably the biggest pressure has actually been on supporting any smaller emerging new events where in the past the figure may have been higher than what it has certainly been this year. That's where the pressure has been. And in terms of the proportion overall, there has been as it went through a council meeting 4 years or so ago, a continuation of the Masters Games support financially. And I think we're certainly in a scenario now where the percentages, the proportions are out of whack potentially, and is putting pressure on the organisations at the lower end of the funding.
That's come back to me too. Yeah.
And that is the reality, and that is absolutely the case. Yeah.
So the schedule that Deputy Mayor was talking about, will you give us an analysis of who you've given the funding to, why, and what the event is?
The report refers to last financial year. It does refer to funding, council funding, MB funding, and also there are some assumptions we have to make, but a sense of what the ROI was for the money that was put in, and a sense of where we go to in future in terms of the full utilisation or best utilisation of the funding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. I'll go to Kate next, followed by Ross.
Thank you. Thanks for the report and the discussion so far, really helpful. Just a couple of little questions. On the front page, on page 3, you talk about the spending, Whanganui consumer spend figures, and you make the point that the increase in August and July seems to have been predominantly from Whanganui residents not spending locally. Is that not spending or not spending locally?
Sorry, yeah, it was the way that's been written. In the past, it is important to know, and with the figures that we get, we have seen leakage in terms of, yes, it's true, people do go to Palmerston on a Sunday to go to Kmart. It's not a myth. We can see that in our numbers. We can break it down by precinct in Palmerston. We can see it's going on. But for the July-August period, we can just see, generally speaking, Whanganui residents haven't had as much discretionary income, and like I say, it's normally the cream on top from the visitors, but here it's been the crucial bit to help bridge the gap. Yeah.
Okay, so Whanganui residents are not spending out of town, they're just not spending.
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
And we've seen an interesting switch. We've got a breakdown of the sort of upper Victoria Ave, your Countdowns, Pack and Save, etc., versus the Main Street area, the lower CBD.
Yep.
And for the last 2-3 years, the upper CBD is in double-figure consumer spend growth, which may not surprise, but lower CBD has been down, and that switched completely about 6-7 months ago. And using our analysis, we can see it's because there's a change in terms of the dynamic. Visitors a greater share, and they're more likely to spend money down. And I know this doesn't necessarily speak for every single business in that location, but as an average and as an overall view, that's what's happened.
Thank you, that's really useful. But can I take from it that Whanganui residents are not spending?
In those 2 months, it had reduced, but prior to that,
and
there
that's
was
sort of
strong
what we would
spending.
expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're spending at the supermarkets, and that's all. I know I am. Film Whanganui. I mean, some really interesting works going on there. Do we have an idea of the size of the market, or our share in the size of the market, and our opportunity to increase?
Yeah, I'd need to come back to you on that in terms of the size of market. I think it's fair to say in this initial period we've been focusing on winning business. Obviously, we had the 2 major Hollywood productions 2 or 3 years ago, which we were actively involved in. But yeah, I'd need to come back to you in terms of the size of the opportunity. But thank you, good point.
I would be really interested just to understand your thinking, strategic thinking around, given that Wellington's so close and where to workshops and, the competition in this space is...
Yeah, what we found is that neighbouring, Taranaki accepted, neighbouring districts, regions don't have one of these functions. There's a lot of interest and demand in this general area, and with a Wellington scenario, we're actually actively working with Wellington in terms of like the production I refer to. There was elements of that production that were going on in Wellington because they had to, but the shooting of it was happening predominantly in Whanganui, so we're working with them. Yeah.
Okay, and I absolutely appreciate that it might have got a lot of airtime, but not a lot of budget time. you know, so that's where my perception might be.
Yeah, I think, and as part of the discussion on the LOE SOI, at the moment we're doing this at quite a very low level. I think there is an opportunity, but like you say, to do it in a structured way where we understand the opportunities in the market. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a question around Bremworth. You know, had a conversation with someone on the Air Chatham's plane who works for Bremworth, and I understand that none of the staff ended up coming over for various reasons, but great that you presented to them and gave it a good pitch.
Yeah.
Just in terms of ongoing and closeness of relationship with Bremworth and firms like that, can you just describe to me a little bit kind of how that all works?
Yeah, I think it's been as a point I made around making sure we've got a business focus. I've been really actively connecting with business leaders here in Whanganui, the business forum that the mayor ran recently, connecting with people that were part of that, and really getting a sense of where can we add value to them. I gave the Bremworth example in the paper because it's just a note and just an example of how we're connected to these people, but then we want to use everything within our toolbox to support those businesses, whether it's to attract new people over or to support them, help retain them. So I guess at this stage in my relatively early period of permanency is connecting with businesses, connected with the Bartley brothers, for example, yesterday, and like just getting a sense of where the layout, where the important pieces are, and where we can add value, and where we just leave things alone because we don't want to intervene unnecessarily.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate. Ross.
Thank you. Yeah, 3 questions. One is about the international students. We took a hit from COVID, and the numbers are small, and we hope to rebound. Feedback from one resident to me to mention this morning is where she comes from in Australia, some of the high schools actually have on-site accommodation for senior students, the 17-year-olds. There was a view, particularly from the German students and some of the Asian students there, that they preferred a more independent style of living than being billeted in somebody's home. So I just thought I'd make a comment about looking for opportunity for semi-hostel or independent for those older students to be explored. The second, sorry, that was a request. Second question is about, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say iconic events, but the major events that we have each year. Is there, some years ago, there was, before your time, respectfully, there was a push that these events should be financially independent of council funding. I don't know the current view of those major events who do get funding each year when they submit their plans, where you're moving them towards. Is there an expectation? And if they are moving towards that expectation, what support can they be given for grant applications and so on?
Yeah, I think it's an important point. I think we've been in a difficult period with COVID, and while we've talked theoretically about corporate sponsorship, obviously that's been challenging as well. The theory has not changed in that our funding, our funding is designed to have a life cycle to it, and that events should be sustainable within their own rights and not dependent upon any public funding. Notwithstanding that point, what we've found is that this is not unique to the Whanganui area, that events in all regions of New Zealand and probably outside in other countries continue to be pretty reliant on the public funding. It is something that we work with individual organisations on, connect them with corporates, and also make sure they're clear on other community funding opportunities. And in one example, we noted that the way an organisation had actually been set up meant they were unable to get access to certain funds, which, okay, so maybe the organisation needs to go back and understand, should it change its constitution, the way its own structure, to be able to tap into other pools of funding. So yes is the answer, but it's quite a long game to get to that position. Yeah.
Part 2 of that second question is, without naming an event, their expenses have gone through the roof post-COVID for promotional material.
Yeah.
It's a lot more expensive. And I notice, and correct me if I'm wrong, the amount given each year seems to be fairly static. There's no, I'm almost contradicting myself, there's almost no rate of inflation increase. If an event says we have like a 20% increase in our advertising costs, where does that fit in?
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk from our personal perspective, but obviously with a 5% reduction to our budget in real terms for this year, we're able to provide an 8% or 6 point whatever percent increase to their funding as a matter of standard.
So our reduction is impacted on that?
To a degree, yep.
Oh, okay. And my last of my three questions was the back house, which some people call an incubator, because that's what they call it on the East Coast. I think they have incubators, developing ideas. I don't know very much about the back house, and I know it's fairly new. One councillor recently, in the last few days, circulated a long list of what the back house has done and achieved. I was kind of hoping when I read in page 5 that you said it's a broad statement. I know it's a snapshot. It talks about who you're working with and how you're doing it. But I think that list of what's happening would help now that I've got it from a councillor, but I'd like to have it from Whanganui and Partners, the different things that have occurred that are more specific.
Yes, interesting. Thank you, Ross. Thank you. A couple of things to think about is the Backhouse Trust is an independent organisation with a set of trustees that are only connected with Whanganui and Partners and UCOL/Te Pukenga because we were the settlers of the trust. We're not owners, we're not shareholders, we're just in there because we see some possibilities. So therefore, I guess, keeping the line straight, Whanganui and Partners is not responsible for reporting on the backhouse. If we need a mechanism to report on the backhouse, then I'm happy to take that on board and go and talk to trustees about it and figure out how best to do that. There have been significant impacts from the work that Rod Eddy has done and the way he's been able to network in the community. I think one of the best outcomes of the backhouse at the moment, and it was what was discussed last night, is that we have every iwi group at the table as a trustee, not just talking to us, not just chatting with us, but actually signed up as a trustee. Last night we agreed that that's a fairly powerful group now because they haven't signed on to other partnerships like that in the past. That's why we think we've got to hang on to this and find the way through while Te Pukenga sorts itself out, how we come through and what we come out the other end. At the present time, the backhouse is, I can't remember the percentage, about 60% tenanted. And Te Pukenga don't want to let it go. However, they may not be the people, the ones that we're meeting now and the ones that are regional directors may not be the people that make the decision in the future. So we've got to find a way through it. The people from the iwi that we met with in our trustee last night believe we can make a way through it even if they're not there in the future. But we have not got that plan in place yet.
Perfect. That's all, Ross? Fantastic. Okay, just a couple of final questions from me around the international student program. So that 100.5 full-time equivalent students that we had pre-COVID, in terms of our recovery, how are we comparing to similar sized districts with similar accommodation issues? And
I don't have those figures, but I'll go and check, Josh.
yeah, no, that'd be good. Thank you. And in terms of our international student exchange program, I mean, I know that in the last couple of months, me, Andrew, myself, and Councillor Rob have welcomed a couple of student cohorts into the chambers here. How are we comparing in that space in terms of attracting those exchanges back to Whanganui?
I'd have to check back to other other areas to see how we're comparing. It feels like we're doing pretty well with something either coming in or potentially going out every week. I mean, we've had 3 face-to-face interactions with the Tokyo Board of Education in the space of 6 or 7 weeks, and this wasn't one person coming over. It was last week. It was 28, and they're really serious about having a relationship with us. And it's that sort of inertia that we've disrupted that conversation that normally they just go to Auckland, that's all they really know, and we've got into that conversation through our connection with Education New Zealand, and there's even a short-term benefit of them being here last week, obviously for our businesses, but then it's about the long tail of the opportunity on the relationships. But I will check as per a couple of points, good points here, the overall market context and how we're comparing.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll go to Helen for a final question before we close off.
Yeah, thank you. On page 5, you mentioned the Ipsos completed their work on the Whanganui Business Survey.
Yeah.
What was that? So I presume there's a whole range of questions there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we could get a copy of that, because
Yeah.
you're obviously our eyes and ears
Yeah.
for business.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you, Jonathan and Gail, for your presentation this morning. And I'm not sure whether you both presented at the last CCO Committee meeting, but if not, just welcome to both of you in your new roles as well. And really appreciate your contributions here this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. So can I have a mover for the recommendation that we receive the quarterly Whanganui Partners report for the July-October 2023 year? Helen and Kate. Perfect, thank you. And comments? Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Look, thanks very much for your report. And it's been a long, grueling session. But look, I attended the public session you had the other day, and it was absolutely fantastic. I take my hat off to you. I think it was, and the feedback from that was really excellent. And you gave us a lot of information that helped to really flavour and help us understand what you do. And that's what I'm getting at. You know, the councillors here and the general public would love to hear a bit more detail about what you do. And especially having the guests come in whose businesses had been supported through Whanganui and Partners was really, really valuable hearing that. And some really good news story. And I see that Colleen Sheldon, she was in the middle of a lot of that. So, you know, you've got some excellent staff doing some really good work. I just want to say, like, you are our eyes and ears out there. And so we do need to hear what we need to know as well. So I am looking for a little bit more flavour, perhaps, you know, if you're hearing about risks out there that we should know about, or opportunities we should know about. You know, we're putting all our eggs in one basket really with you guys, and sort of saying, hey, go and be our eyes and ears as well as our agent. And so I'm not hearing a lot of that, you know, like if there's something major happening out there, whether it's legislation that's impacting on the businesses or the farmers or whatever, or there's something else going on economically that we should have a heads up on. That's a sort of I'd like a little bit of feedback coming through there if that's obviously something that's coming through all the work that you're doing. I would really like a meeting about that UNESCO City of Design, so however you want to arrange that. It would be really good in your next report perhaps to, you know, pick up one of your operations and give us a bit of flavour of what you do, maybe like the film Whanganui, just so that we understand better, even if it's just, you know, look, we don't have to put a lot of resource into this, but these are the potential outcomes. So just so we're getting that bit of flavour, and of course the public are watching these as well. So it gives them a bit more of an idea of some of your operations. And other than that, I think I've covered it all. Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Helen. I'll go to Rob next.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to echo what the Deputy Mayor said about last Thursday night. I thought it was excellent. And what came across quite strongly to me was that Whanganui and Partners was set up to link with the business community, you know, and the visitor sector, and get people in the community involved. And it was pretty obvious on Thursday night that was being done very well. There was a great number of people from the business community and a lot of faces that I had never seen before. So well done in that aspect. Just one thing about events. We don't seem to put out a summer events calendar, and I wonder You know, that's to me is one of the best marketing tools. I always remember that Taranaki was strong on this with their top 10 events of the summer. You know, and some calendar is important because otherwise you get people putting on the events in the same weekend and various things like that. So, I mean, if that is something to be thought about, Jonathan, I think that's a very good marketing tool. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, and I'll go to Ross.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Councillor Helen and Councillor Rob said about last Thursday night. I was there. I've been to most of the forums that have been held. That was by far the most exciting, invigorating, informative, specific one that I've been to. It was especially great to have examples of people where they actually said, Whanganui and partners, it wouldn't have happened without their support. They took us through each step and the obstacles and the roadblocks. I found that absolutely a positive in that regard. So I just wanted to give you a compliment that I found it very rewarding, and it was a packed room as well. And again, a lot of faces in business that I didn't recognise, which is great to see. And regarding the events calendar, the reason I would also support what Councillor Rob, is, my colleague to my right, is saying, is there are other events outside of Whanganui that occur at the exact same time, particularly Martin. And I think if we had a calendar, we could get in first, ahead of them, so that they could make their bookings and arrangements to come into Whanganui and then consider the other ones later on.
Thank you, Ross.
May I respond?
Not yet, sorry, okay. Gail. I'll just pass the vote and then I'll let you respond afterwards. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour of the resolution, please say aye. Against? That is carried. And Gail, if you want to make a brief comment, you can do so
Thank
now.
you. Well, I'm very sorry I missed the forum on Thursday night, but I was struck down with COVID. Didn't want to spread it around. I didn't want to be as generous as the person that gave it to me. What I do want to say about the presentation on Thursday night was we've talked quite a bit in Whanganui Partners about how do you convey to the public and to the councillors the work you do, because economic development is an interesting activity whereby often people accept your assistance, are happy to have your guidance, move on a new pathway, achieve something outstanding. A press person will come along and talk to them, and never once will they say, Whanganui Partners helped us get here. So you have to be able to work in this space, recognising that someone else is going to go to great places, and you may not be recognised for it, but you can feel that you've done a good job. I am interested in ways that we can convey, taking on the Deputy Mayor's comments, how we can convey the work we do to yourselves and to the community. I do have some ideas, and we haven't gone down that track yet, but this public forum was the first of some of those ideas that we've discussed. So pleased to hear your feedback. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go on to item number 5.2, which is the Holdings Quarterly Report. Jeff, welcome up to the presenters table, and I think we've got Carolyn on Zoom from memory. And just to confirm, elected members, that the live stream is working as it should. So we'll just wait for Carolyn to sign in. Is she in the waiting room? Okay. Perfect. Welcome, Carolyn. Good to have you here. Can you hear us okay?
Kia ora, I can hear you. Yes, that's
Perfect.
fine. And I can kind of see you as very small little.
That's the one. So we've got Jeff here in the room as well. You probably can't see him on the screen, but I'll hand it over to the two of you to decide how to present this item. Just want to make the comment first of all, though, that this item is separated into two separate resolutions, as you can see up on the screen. One is in relation to the quarterly report, and the other is in relation to a series of resolutions that we need to adopt as part of the 2020, 2021 and 2022 AGMs for holdings. And just to make the point to elected members that we do have the confidential section of the holdings report as well. And so if you do have any questions in relation to that, please hold them until we move into confidence. So Jeff and Carolyn, I'll pass over to you two to present the report. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora, thank you. So I'm first of all, aroha, my apologies for not being able to be there with you in person today. I've just kind of got back-to-back review meetings on this week, so I wasn't able to come up, but nice to see you, all your kanohi on the screen. I think I can probably take the report as read, but just wanted to really just acknowledge that the landscape is a little bit flexible at the moment, and a few things that we've got on our agenda are obviously on hold pending the outcomes of the CCO review. So that's why there's not been as much progress on some of those items as there might have been in a different context. So you'll see a number of things there that we've referred to on our work plan that just need to wait till those outcomes are through. Just wanted to touch on the AGMs and audit piece. So we had put forward some recommendations which had been drafted and approved, discussed with our lawyers and auditors around the AGM. So we haven't formally held AGMs for the last few years, and just need a formal confirmation just to keep us in line with our constitution that that council confirms that no AGMs need to be held. In terms of the financial statements, those are, we had hoped that those would have been finished and able to be presented from our auditors by the time of this week, but we don't have those yet, and Jeff will jump in and correct me if I've got anything wrong here. But so we haven't been able to actually provide those financial statements to you. So what my proposal is that we would ask you to adopt the resolutions in relation to those, in principle, pending provision of the formal final audited financial statements, which we would do by the time of the 8th of December council meeting. I think that's probably the best approach for us to take. But it would be great to get confirmation from you in relation to the AGMs in this way, if that's possible. And in relation to anything else, I think most of our kōrero will be in relation to the confidential section of our report. So
Perfect.
Jeff,
Thank you,
Jeff,
Carol.
do you want? It's a little bit tricky. I can't actually see Jeff there. But, Jeff, do you want to make any comments, or anyone else, or before we ask for questions?
No, I think you've covered everything, Carolyn. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. Any questions? Ross.
Well, it's actually a question to the chair, if that's all right. Technically, in these motions that are before us, if we were not present during the time periods mentioned, those councillors, does that matter where we're seeking to pass these things? Like the minutes of the 3rd of December 2019, adoption of 2020 to 2022 financial statements. So it's just a process question as to whether technically councillors who weren't present can actually in fact participate in that.
I mean, these resolutions have been looked over by our general counsel quite extensively. I'll ask the CE for a comment if required, but they have been looked at fairly closely from a legal perspective. Take a pause.
Sorry.
I don't understand. Good enough to get it over the line without the newbies. One, two, three. Really, the whole thing is.
All right. Sorry about that, everyone. So thanks for the question, Ross. It's a worthwhile thing to consider. So just to be safe, we're going to focus today on passing the other two resolutions, which, as far as I understand it, will not impact what Holdings requires to have those AGM resolutions confirmed. What we will do is table that first resolution at a future meeting. It may be council or it may be the next CCO committee meeting, but just to be safe, we will double check it and come back to it at a later date.
Yeah.
Was that your only question, Ross? Okay, I'll go to Kate next and then Rob.
I've got a bit of a different version of what you've just said.
Great.
Do you want to hear it?
I'd
Or
love
shall
to.
I just be quiet?
I'd absolutely love to.
Look, it's a bit of a nothing resolution, really. It's just, you know, it's a tidy up. I think we probably, if anybody who wasn't on council at the time that this recommendation refers to could abstain, I think we've got enough to get it over the line. It's just a tidy up thing. And in the interests of minimising bureaucracy and extra work, I mean, I think we just see if we can get it over the line myself. But, yeah. You know.
I feel like I'm now
Yeah.
the prudent bureaucrat of the room. I'm going to stick to my earlier suggestion to hold off on it, and given how simple a resolution it is, hopefully when it comes back at the next meeting, it will be a 20-second process, and we'll have it passed and confirmed. But I think just to be on the prudent side, we'll hold off on that one and entertain the other two, just to be safe.
I'm going to ignore the implication that I'm being imprudent, Mr. Chair, but
that implication was absolutely not made. Over prudence, let's go with that.
All right.
Do you have?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
take it away.
Thanks for the report, Greg and Carolyn. I'd be interested in, whilst you know the recommendation or the resolution for the shareholder to agree that there is no need for an AGM, I would be interested in understanding. You will have done an annual meeting or an annual review of the last year, I am sure, with or without, well, you would have had financial statements, admittedly financial statements that haven't been audited. So I would just be interested in understanding from you, probably a question for you, Carolyn, just what process you've gone through in terms of reviewing the last year, each year.
So we've thank you for the question. We've gone through the normal process of preparing financial statements, and they are in the audit system. So that's that's part of the issue at the moment. And I think it stems back to the sort of COVID days, and so the auditors are a bit overrun at the moment, and so they're behind time, and there's been quite a bit of questioning to and fro. So I think it's fair to say, isn't it, Jeff, that we've been through the usual processes on that front. We just haven't had the formal final AGM tick off, which the purpose of which is to I guess pass those financial statements. So that's the reason that we're coming to you now for a tidy up of those. And unfortunately, we still don't have those audited financial statements, but our understanding from the auditors is they're not far away, and we should have them imminently. So that's the reason that we're here. Jeff, is there anything you want to add to that?
I think I would just add that, I mean, COVID was basically the instigator behind all of this. And there's been, COVID had an impact on the Pilot Academy, and of course getting the Pilot Academy accounts signed off was required for Holdings to be able to sign its accounts off. And it's just compounded, I guess, in terms of the impact post-COVID on the Pilot Academy. We can see a pathway to recovery, and this was really just a tidy up. The AGM for FY23, the year just gone, it is intended to be as we used to do them. This is really just a question we put to our lawyers, which was, we've got a whole lot of AGMs that we didn't hold. What's the practical solution to an alternative whereby we have theoretically 3 AGMs in very quick succession just to tick boxes? And this was their sort of practical solution in terms of what that solution was.
And could I just add to that we're certainly not unique in taking this approach, that there's a number of organisations that I'm certainly aware of that have taken a very similar approach, particularly in the last few years, given the impact of COVID on people's businesses and processes. And I would just also say that the AGM as a meeting is generally quite very short and quite a formality. And I want to reassure you all that it's got no bearing on the financial management of the business, which has been proceeding with care and attention, as you would expect.
Thank you. That was the last bit I was really looking for, so thank you for that. GasNet strategic options. I was a little bit interested to see that you've deferred the report, updating the PwC report in terms of strategic options for GasNet. Can you talk me through? I understand. Just draw me the link with the CCO review. Draw me the link between kind of getting an updated report in terms of what the market's doing and GasNet's options.
Yeah, thank you. That's it's a good question, and I think that one is probably probably more related to the climate and the authorising environment that we're operating in terms of there being a huge potential amount of change and policy direction with the change of government and with the development. So we talked earlier in the year about the sort of the developments in the gas industry and the gas transition plan that the government and gas industry company have been working on over the last number of months, following there was a gas market investigation a couple of years ago now, and the government's been doing a lot of work in the background. And depending on where we land in terms of strategically what is happening in the gas industry in New Zealand and the broader energy industry and how it all fits together, that would make a really quite significant change in how GasNet sits. And so what we didn't want to do is, when we thought that was while it's still in process, to spend ratepayer money effectively developing a report that might not be relevant once the change of government comes in and the new energy strategy is in place. So I guess it was a prudent move on our part to make sure that when we do that work and when the council is making decisions on the future of GasNet, it's doing that from an informed position rather than an isolated position, when there's likely to be some potentially quite significant changes in the policy settings and the market coming up very shortly. So that's the main rationale there.
Yeah, thank you. So it sounds to me like it was more linked to the whole environment being in flux.
Yeah, and
rather
that, so
than the CCO
in terms of the
review.
energy
Thank you.
industry and climate
makes
change.
absolute sense. I'm just wondering if we could have a bit of a screen dump just in terms of what the director's awareness of the market at the moment would be, just for our information at some stage. Just to keep us, because it's a couple of years since we had that review done, and it would
Yeah.
be just to help our understanding of, you know, what's to come. Although absolutely appreciate that, you know, the whole country's hit the pause button at the moment while the government gets itself sorted.
Well, perhaps if we come back to you next time with a sort of a summary of what's going on in terms of the developments in the policy context and the market, and then we can have that deeper workshop conversation once that strategic context is clearer, which I would hope would be not too far away.
Yep.
Does that, and so if we can, we'll give you sort of that what's happening and how does it all fit together next time, and hopefully then shortly after that we'll be able to have a better conversation about the direction of travel. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Rob.
Thank you. Thank you. Carolyn, I'm just, there's been a lot happening in NZICPA of recent times, and it looks quite exciting, and, you know, the return after the effect of COVID. But what I'm wanting to know is how you interact with that board and how you interact with the GasNet board as holdings directors. I know you've got two there at the two new directors at the moment, but what's the reporting regime, and do you have face-to-face meetings with NZICPA board and the GasNet board, or is it all on Zoom? Or
no, so when I was up in Whanganui last month, I met with the ICPA and GasNet directors face to face. We get regular reporting in from them, and as needed we have conversations, whether that be over the phone or in a Zoom. We haven't had very many face-to-face meetings in the last year, I would say, but we certainly have had regular reporting and regular conversations, and I did have that face-to-face cordial with them last month.
So what about financial reporting? How do you get the financial reporting from NZICPA to give us the confidence that everything's good? What's the reporting regime?
So that they report through to us on at least a monthly basis, and because of the financial arrangements between us, we also have we've got other regular conversations happening in relation to their finances. So it's I think it's standard good practice reporting of a subsidiary to
So there's nothing that comes from their reports that should be reported through to here, that, in your opinion? Because we don't get very much information.
Just bearing in mind too, Rob, that we do have the confidential report as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Anything further you want to add on that, Carolyn?
Jeff, did you want to add anything to that? Bearing in mind that we've got a conversation about some other aspects a little bit later.
Maybe if I could just add, in terms of the formality, I organise the board meetings, holdings board meetings, and there's a call at each board meeting for the chair's reports from the subsidiaries, and that is a narrative, typically exceptions reporting, anything that the subsidiaries consider as appropriate reporting to holdings, and supported by financials, and that's a regular agenda item for each meeting. So the holdings board, when they meet, have those chairs' reports with the financials. In terms of reporting through to yourselves, again, that's exception reporting, I guess, in terms of picking the key items up and reporting those through to yourselves. Less operational, obviously, but where it is considered relevant and informative, then that would be included. But effectively, what you see here is a subset of the key issues that the board has considered as appropriate to report through to yourselves, and it may be of interest.
And just a final question: that the new directors, will they be coming to Whanganui at some time to be introduced to council, to the members in this room?
Absolutely. So they were in Whanganui at our meeting last month. So that was fabulous to have them on board. And I know that they will they'll make a great contribution to Whanganui, to the council, and the ratepayers of the region. So I'm really excited to have those two excellent new directors on board. So they were here in person in Whanganui last month, and we met with the mayor and the chief executive and deputy chief executive face to face last month. So the intention is certainly that, I mean, we will obviously we want to be financially prudent as well. So we don't necessarily want to be covering travel costs, travel and accommodation costs for every hui, but they are certainly committed to our city and want to make sure that we do have some good ātinana sort of in-person time in the city as well. So.
Right, thanks Rob, and thank you Carolyn and Jeff for answering those questions. So we'll move to the recommendations now. So the recommendations are that the committee receive the quarterly report, and as shareholder of holdings, we pass the following resolutions to overdue holdings annual general meetings for the years financial year 20 through to financial year 22, and we'll hold off on resolution 1 around the confirmation of the minutes of the AGM on the 3rd of December. So we won't pass that today, but the following resolutions are that we confirm that no AGMs need be held. We adopt the financial statements for 2020 through 2022. And we also confirm that no changes need to be entered for the Directors' Interest Register in respect of these resolutions. So can I...
Just a clarification.
Oh, and there's two more. Sorry, Philippa, I'll come to you in a second. So we're reappointing the auditors for a further 12 months and also authorising the Chief Executive to sign the minute book. Yes, Philippa.
I thought Carolyn said earlier, particularly around, I think, resolution 3, in principle decision, not that resolution. Sorry, has that been changed now? Has it?
Sorry, if I can just step in, it's that resolution 3, the only issue with that one. So the others are fine, but the resolution 3, we don't actually have those audited financial statements. So we had hoped that they would have been attached, but they haven't been able to be attached yet. So that's just the other one that we just need to hold off on for now.
Right,
and
okay, sorry, I thought you were referring to
apologies for that.
This financial year only. Okay, yep, no, that's fine. So we'll table those two resolutions at the next available council meeting. So that's number 1 and number 3, and we're passing the remainder. So can I have a mover for that, please? Charlie will move and Peter will second. Are there any comments? No comments? Philippa? Yep.
While I'm likely to support these resolutions, and I guess it's kind of, we're in a public meeting, of course, and understand that the reasoning around these financial statements basically not being signed off is by the auditor, and I think Carolyn said is probably largely due to NZICPA and some of its difficulties. I just think, many of us sit on a whole lot of organisations, including community organisations that have been holding AGMs right through COVID. So I think it's just really important that we, normal practices we would expect, we all, there's been difficult times and AGMs have been held and financial reports have been approved and on time and it's actually quite a process and some cost for many organisations. So my understanding is clearly, and I think for the public, that it is just a process through the auditors, particularly around NZICPA, but they would be coming through to our council meeting before the end of the year. Correct? Thank you.
No further comments? All right, all those in favour of those resolutions, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Carolyn, very much for being here this morning, and have a nice day. Oh, actually, no, sorry, you're going to be waiting, aren't you? Not going anywhere yet. Right, so we'll move along to item 5.3, so the Whanganui Port Limited Partnership Final Statement of Intent. I'll hand over to David to comment on this, but also Mark and Phil, welcome to the meeting, and look forward to hearing from you as well. David.
Through you, Chair, this report presents to you the statement of intent for the Port Limited Partnership. This one is slightly out of sequence because it was overlooked as part of the original suite of letters of expectation and statements of intent, just simply because of the complexity of the structure and the fact that this needs to come direct to council, even though the port partnership sits under holdings, which would normally be the pathway for the subsidiaries to come up to council. So a little bit of an administrative tidy up. I'm going to hand over to Mark, who can talk to you and answer questions now on the content of the statement of intent that he's prepared. Thank you.
Morning. Just turn on your microphone too. Thank you.
Is that...
That's the one. Perfect.
Thank you. Right. Statement of intent. Sorry, I was just going to have a go through the report first, but I'll just get... What page is the statement of intent on? Sorry.
So it's page 44 of the agenda. Well, that's where the item starts, and then the SOI is attached on page 48.
Thank you. So when so the board that was appointed when I first went on the temporary board, there was no statement of intent, which was clearly an oversight. So we've prepared the statement of intent for the 2024. We didn't move to back dates, inappropriate to do that. So we now have a statement of intent. So the accounts for last year, for 2022 and 2023, will be tagged as having an omission of a statement of intent, which is in the report. So we've presented the statement of intent that's here, and I'm, rather than go through it line by line, I'm just happy to take any questions on it, if there's any questions that come from it.
And just noting that this has already been, prior to coming to this meeting, it was circulated to all elected members, and all elected members were given the opportunity to comment on it. But I will open the floor for questions if there are any. Rob?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I did say I didn't respond at that time, but Mark, my only concern about this statement of intent and is under two objectives, because what this statement of intent does, it talks about the management and the operation of the port all the way through, and doesn't mention anything about an obligation on directors for business attraction and business growth. And I would have thought that would be something that should be embodied into this document. So I would like your comment on that, and whether you feel that that should be words to that effect, whatever they are.
Yeah, look, we'd be happy to include that. I think that the focus has been initially on dealing with the project and getting the project up and running. And whilst we are talking to potential customers and trying to grow the business around the port, we've got to have a port there that we can sell to the public. Yeah. And at the moment, we don't have a functional port in that regard. We've still got a lot of work to do to get the development completed. So we're sort of October next year before stage one is completed. We have the operation at the number one port, which is a small shipping operation.
Yeah.
But we're a bit limited with capacity. But happy to include an obligation to do, to grow the business as we can. But that will be a focus sort of later in the year and into the next year.
But I'm just keen to see it as an objective.
Sure.
I don't know.
I'll just, the CE wants to make a comment, so I'll hand it over to David.
Through you, Chair, when officers read and reviewed the statement of intent, draw your attention to performance targets 6.1.5, manage revenue and cost lines to ensure that break-even financial outcome. We took that management of revenue to be implicit of attracting new business to either the endowment property portfolio or over the wharfs once they're built. We'll take it on board though in future versions to maybe make it a little bit more explicit.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to expand that provision to make it clearer, but it's clearly part of the obligation of the port. But in the first instance, we've got to have a product that we can market readily.
Any further questions, Kate?
Oh, that was...
Oh, perfect. All right, well, let's move to the recommendation. Thank you both for the report. So that the council's sole unit holder, shareholder, adopts the Statement of Intent 2324 for the Whanganui Port Limited Partnership. Can I have a mover, please?
Can I suggest an amendment?
Sure.
Just that it's an amended Statement of Intent, just to include, planning for business growth under 6.1.5.
Are we able to adopt a statement of intent that has an amendment that we haven't seen the wording of?
Look, through you, Chair, from my point of view, you're not changing the intent of 6.1.5, you're just making the wording a little bit more explicit. So I would be comfortable if you were to amend the resolution saying that there can be, subject to minor amendments, and then we'll wrap that up as one of those minor amendments to the wording.
Okay, if we can get that inserted in.
I would be happy to move that recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Perfect, thank you, Kate, and a seconder, please. Rob will second, so I'll just wait for that wording to get up there. Perfect. Any comments? No comments. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Great, and we'll move on to 5.4, the Port Limited Partnership Update Report, and Mark and Phil, hand it over to you again.
I'll hand over to Phil to talk about the project. Just quickly, the new board has been appointed and put in place. For those of you that don't know this one, so I've been reappointed, and Nick Wareham, who was General Manager of Assets at Centre Port of Wellington, has joined the board, and Hayden Tura will join the board.
Oh, can you put your microphone on, please, Mark? Sorry.
And Hayden Tura will join the board once his obligations with council in the resource consenting area is complete. So in the meantime, Ken Mayer has remained as a director on the board. We envisage that will happen sometime early in the new year. There's just notes here on the audit and what have you, which I think are fairly self-explanatory.
Sorry, Mark, can I just interrupt for a moment? I think elected members might, I'm gathering that you don't have the report in front of you. So it's at the late item, and it's in diligent on page 70 of 74, and the report's at the back of it. Got it? You all good, Rob?
Yep.
Perfect. Sorry, Mark.
So in terms of annual accounts, we've completed 22 and 23. There was obviously a catch-up to do that predated the current board. and the annual general meetings will be held presently. We'll make a presentation to Holdings Limited, or the shareholder, and complete those and get the books in proper shape. We've approved budgets, and the construction contract is now underway. There's a couple of photos there, and I'll let Phil give you an update on where the project is at.
Well, as noted, councillors, all of you are aware, and I think many of you attended the celebration for the true breaking of the ground, and that really was an opportunity. We did schedule that to coincide with a request to host Minister. We were very mindful of those relationships, both post-election and otherwise. As I say to the group, it's not the Minister as much as those staffers that are travelling and seeing progress with a project like this and being able to support the initiatives or other requests as we progress through the other stages of the project. So it's making sure that all of Kanoa is aware of success and that stage one being underway. As Mark's included a couple of recent images, a picture does say 1,000 words, and you can see there in the first image very careful, diligent demolition, and it's actually probably not demolition, it's deconstruction of the existing wharf, not just because we wish to repurpose the entirety of it, but also to recognise the sensitivity of the Awa flowing beneath it. And in fact, the Awa flows a long way beneath it where it shouldn't be flowing because of the degradation of the asset that's already there. The second image does show you where the money is going, and it's like anything with the foundations for a project, the foundations for a building. Most of the expenditure is going in underground where you can't see it. Those piles were sticking up at the time of the photo, but are now down 27 metres below that wood deck level. So again, you can't see them today, but that is the first of the investment of what is this multi-million-dollar contract to shore up this works. The report obviously just indicates where we're up to, but the next stage it indicates the building support package, which is to link to the heavy pavement with our key primary tenancy that has been contracted to be into this site, and that is our focus and the board's focus for getting that construction of that building pavilion underway, which will be next, in parallel to the stage 2, which is the wharf 2, and the procurement of a dredge, which is all in parallel, which you'll see in your next reporting as update. But looking ahead, that is what the work that the board has underway at this present time.
Thanks, Phil. Just a quick question from me before I open it up to everyone else. With the build having begun, I imagine that the likes of the Anatoki, for instance, are still able to continue operations as usual, with Wharf 1 being in the condition it's in, and
yes,
you know.
Yeah, there's obviously a parallel. The board is mindful of the existing assets and the management of existing asset, and as Mark's indicated, that shipping operation is very active on this coast and in and out of Whanganui, running to the South Island, primarily Nelson and Timaru, varying with. So that is being cherished because that is the one true business that is very active on that wharf, is the only business in fact that's active. That wharf does require works, and the board's underway with some asset condition assessments to understand where the existing asset needs to be cared for. So absolutely, there is a dredging requirement in that wharf at the current time, and there's operational management to get that up to date as that dredging equipment comes online.
Perfect, thank you. I'll go to Peter.
Thank you, Josh. Through the chair, the completion date and its correlation with Q West, is that still on track?
So the completion date, as Mark's mentioned, is October next year. It was a 14-month contract. As you know already, this is a fixed term, fixed price for the about 91% of that project. We don't believe that that will stray. They were slightly ahead of program at this time. It is no doubt that Key West would enjoy this facility earlier because you know that they've got a two-vessel build, a significant two-vessel build. So the port board is working to facilitate anything that's possible to facilitate the support as quickly as possible for those two vessels, and Key West is making provision. We'll be ready to accommodate the vessel, any of those two vessels that are key to his business right now and is publicly known, as soon as that hard stand pavement is available.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Kate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, and congratulations on your reappointment, and thank you for taking up that appointment. I know you've got a lot of experience. My particular interest is around the health and safety of the site, and I guess thank you for picking up the CHASAMS, you know, the work that we've done through council generally, or the chief executive has led, and I see now you've got an independent maritime safety consultant involved.
Yes.
Can you just unpack that for me? Tell me what's where and what your thinking is.
Right. So there's two parts to health and safety in a port, and there's a demarcation line between what's dealt with by WorkSafe and what's dealt with by Maritime New Zealand, and they tend not to cross. One of the concerns I had when I came on the board was the maritime safety provisions for us. And sorry about it's not Jason Dilly, it's Jim Dilly. And so through Phil, we've engaged Jim to come and have a look at our maritime. So for a start, CHASM's come in and given a bunch of recommendations, and those are underway. So we're completing the work that they've suggested. With maritime safety, Jim Dilly has started his process, and that includes looking at our maritime procedures, looking at the navigation equipment that we have, and that we're up to speed. His initial comment back to us is that he's happy with what he sees, that the staff down there are doing a good job with the equipment they've got. So we expect his report before Christmas, I would think. That will give us an outline of the work that we need to do to have it fit for purpose. Jim will also have an ongoing role as ships that want to come in that are longer than we currently accept. So it's 51 metres is the maximum ship that we allow in. Now, Doug has a bigger ship that he wants to bring in. So we need a procedure to review the safety around bringing bigger ships in. And we will run that through Jim Dilly, who's an experienced harbour master. And we will put in procedures that he recommends for bigger boats to come in, if we can accommodate them. I mean, we have limits on how deep we are at the bar and also how deep we are at the wharf. But so that was an area that certainly I had concerns about when I joined the board, but we're now well underway to getting that under control.
Thank you. So that's planning for the future. Then you've got an operating port and a construction, two aspects.
So there's an independent health and safety consultant involved with the project. So I'll let Phil explain that.
Yes, the quite deliberate appointment of an independent health and safety professional on what we call the project management group that manages the project delivery, which is part of the broader team around myself, is a local that is charged with the health and safety provision for everything from the person changing a switch in the office down there right through to peer reviewing and auditing the construction contractor that we have on site. So very, very deliberate appointment there to give that absolute surety that we can have best practices and include that auditing provision as well.
Thank you.
I think you can take it from certainly from the board. We're well aware that ports are inherently dangerous. You just need to pick up papers from a couple of years ago. There's been deaths on ports around the country in terms of failure to comply with operating procedures. So we're very aware.
Thank you. Could I ask that in future that you flesh out the health and safety aspect of the reports? I mean, I know we're only the shareholder.
Yep. No, that's happy to do that, and we can also give some insight into what Jim Dilly's recommendations have been around the maritime safety. I've been involved in situations where you've had an incident over the water, and you call in WorkSafe, and WorkSafe go, not our problem. So we get those demarcations sorted out, we get our proper procedures sorted out, and I think we'll be fine, but we're happy to expand on that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate. And I'll go to Rob next.
Thank you. First of all, the resource consenting process, is that complete now? Are all the consents in place?
Let me answer it this way, Councillor, is that the additional consent that we are seeking is for a long-term dredging consent, which is the one consent that we've chosen to work on at this time. We own and hold a consent for dredging, but only for a 24-month period, and it was a deliberate decision to do that. That's one of the first things that the board did, was to fill the void prior to Christmas last year, was to seek a dredging consent that carried the project. The purpose of the second application is a much more longer look at the needs of the dredging in the lower river basin, and with that comes more conversation with the requirements of stakeholders, in particular considerations for Te Awa Tupou and other iwi considerations for dredging to the extent that is required for the entirety of the lower river basin.
Okay, thank you. Other question, Mark, there's two entities out there. There's the general partner and the operating company. Have the directors formed a view yet on the efficiency of that? And could it be operated just as one entity?
As I understand it, the split is a requirement of Kanoa. I mean, it could be operated as one entity if that was the structure that was acceptable, but Kanoa wanted a limited partnership arrangement with an operating company below. As a board, we run concurrent meetings, and it's the same board with the same people. So, and we now have a single collective directors fee that covers both boards. So, it operates in a practical sense. It operates as a single entity, but we have the financial considerations sit within the LP and the operating within the OPCO.
Okay.
And there are some technical reasons. There are some benefits to being a port company for the portion that is a port operator versus possibly where the assets and other entities such as the property portfolio are held. And that was why we believe that Kanoa took the position of having the multiple entities.
Yeah. Okay, no, it's just that maybe over time the directors may have a different view and recommend something to Kanoa.
I think at the time that the project is complete is probably the time that you would look at what sort of entity it was and look at probably a single port entity at that point. But during the project, it's fine. You know, we don't have any particular operating problems as it stands.
Just invite the CE to make a comment as well.
Through you, Chair, just want to comment that that particular line of question is something that's been explored through the CCO review. and Kanoa have already been engaged as one of the funding partners to see whether that kind of change would be acceptable to them. They have confirmed in writing that it would be. Next steps would be to look at, say, timing and other implications of making that change. But we have, as Mr. Peterson's already outlined, foreshadowed that as an efficiency by having a single set of directors that are paid a single fee to operate and oversee both entities.
Great, thanks, David. All right, thank you both for the presentation. I'll move to the recommendation now that we received the report from the limited partnership. Can I have a mover? Jenny will move, and Kate will second. Any comments?
Thank you.
Touche. Great, okay. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you both very much. All right, so we've got a motion to exclude the public. How do people feel about having a break? Yep, 10 minutes? Right, we'll move the resolution first. If we can just find it. Thank you. Jenny will move. Ross will second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. All right, see you all in... Oh, yep. Oh, okay, and that all the people listed up there are allowed to stay in the meeting.